play the first part. I hope the sound is coming.
Detroit, 1971, I was initiated. We drove up from New Vrindavan. And being initiated by Srila Prabhupada is such an awesome experience that I was completely stunned at the initiation. The system was, you've probably seen the pictures where you see strands of beads on microphones draped. So Prabhupada would chant on these beads. He'd chant one round on the beads, and then you'd be called up for the initiation. So we were in Detroit, and Prabhupada was chanting on the beads that were to become my initiation beads. And my name is called Richard Hall, and I staggered up, knelt in front of Prabhupada. Now, when you looked at Srila Prabhupada, you were looking at a person who was unfathomable. It's like looking at the ocean of truth. And at the same time, he's looking right through you. So it's an incredible experience. So he asked me the 4 rules. I answered, and he said, "Your name is Suresvara. It is a name for Lord Brahma. It means controller of the demigods. You are servant of the controller." So as he was saying this, I was like just getting more and more stupefied. I was kneeling in front of him like this. And I was, So he saw that I was stunned. So he had the beads. As he was speaking, he had the beads in his hands. He just finished chanting. And he saw that I was stunned, so he just held out the beads. And he said, "Come on, take your beads." He started rattling them in front of my nose just to... So finally, in 1975, I got a chance to go on a morning walk with Prabhupada in Miami Beach. There was about a dozen of us, so it was pretty... It wasn't like 300 people in a temple room, it was just a few of us on the beach. So Prabhupada was walking on the shore, and his cane would put holes in the sand right as the ocean would come up. And then when someone would ask a question, he would stop. He was leading the pack, and he'd turn to answer us, like this. So somehow, at one point in the walk, I stopped short, right in back of Prabhupada's head. His head was about this far from me. And somebody asked a question, I don't know what the question was, and then Prabhupada started speaking. I didn't know what he was saying, because all I could think was, wow, I'm right in back of Prabhupada's head. And I was studying his head, and it was golden head, and it had silver hairs, and different furrows in the back of his neck. And then Krishna gave me a wonderful idea, realization, that I was this far from Prabhupada physically, but actually, spiritually, I was like millions of miles away. So it was too bad that was true, but it was also enlivening, because all of a sudden I realized that what the devotees had told me all these years was true, that actually real association is not physical. It's vibration, vani. And I became very happy that I also had the opportunity to become very close and intimate with Prabhupada through vibration, vani. 1972, September, Srila Prabhupada's flying into Dallas to install Sri Sri Radhakalachandji. He arrives in Love Field via American Airlines. We usher him into the VIP room at Love Field. And Prabhupada sits on this makeshift dais and immediately starts talking about the 3 ways to fly. He just sits on this seat and he says, "So, there are 3 ways to fly." So the reporters are all there and they're taking down this 3 ways to fly. I'm standing next to this woman reporter and I'm looking at her pad. 3 ways to fly. Yes, Prabhupada starts, yes. Pigeon. He didn't say swan, he said pigeon. Pigeon, mantra, and machine. Yes, formerly, Prabhupada said, formerly people knew the art of training up pigeons, he said, and you just get on the pigeons and just fly. So the woman's riding pigeon, and then he says, and then mantra, simply by vibrating mantra, the yogi knew how to ride on the sound, like that. So mantra, all the reporters are writing this down. And then machine. And then so this lady shot up her hand. And she said, so, Swami, if you know all these different ways to fly, then why did you choose to fly American Airlines today? So Prabhupada said, to be one with you. And the lady turned to me and she said, I like that man. I remember at the start of the lecture, before the initiation, Srila Prabhupada sent two boys out of the room because they didn't have tilak on. Boys were named Girish and Birbhadra. These were the sons of Shalavati, who had been living at New Vrindavan with us. They were 8, 9, 10, something like that. So even though they were just boys, Prabhupada saw their faces. They didn't have tilak on. So he said, go put tilak. He just motioned them out of the room. Put tilak. And then while they were out of the room anointing their bodies with tilak, Prabhupada started talking about tilak and how tilak was our trademark. We are selling Krishna for free, and still no one will take. And when he said that, he just started laughing. His belly started, like, no one will take. He started laughing. And then Srila Prabhupada started giving a very intricate lecture, at least intricate to me. Perhaps I was just tired or whatever. I couldn't follow it, what Srila Prabhupada was talking about. And then finally, I started to catch on when his lecture was interrupted by Bhagavan Das's, Bhagavan was the president of the temple, his little baby son started clanging on the these kartals he had in his hand. Mother Krishna Vamini was holding him, and he started clanging on the kartals. And when the child did that, Prabhupada expertly used it in his lecture. He said, just like this child, he has had practice. So Prabhupada had been talking about transmigration of the soul. I hadn't been following it. And then when Prabhupada said he has had practice, he started beaming at this little boy. And then the little boy started beaming at Srila Prabhupada. We were looking at the boy, looking at Prabhupada. There was like a very dramatic pause. He has had practice. It's like there was something going on between Prabhupada and this little boy. And then I started to catch on. It was about transmigration. And then the next day was Vyasa Puja. And Srila Prabhupada gave an address that's been published in different places, famous Vyasa Puja address at New Vrindavan, 1972. And Srila Prabhupada very intelligently started talking about the meaning of Vyasa Puja and how the spiritual master considers himself the very humble servant of the previous acharyas and of Krishna. He doesn't think he's God Almighty, which is what one may have thought by seeing all this worship being offered to him on the Vyasa-san. There were many guests. Again, there were journalists, scholars, all kinds of people. So he started talking about how he considered himself the dog of God. I am the dog of God. He said it's just like if you want to please a very big man in this world, it's very difficult to even meet him, or what to speak of pleasing him, because he's so big. But if you simply give his dog a 2-cent lozenge, Prabhupada said, then very easily he's pleased. So I am the dog of God. It is very difficult to please Krishna. It's very easy to please me. Just chant Hare Krishna. So Jai Srila Prabhupada, we had a big roaring kirtan. Before the kirtan, though, Srila Prabhupada took questions. And Prabhupada in his lecture had been talking about how strong Maya is. So the first question immediately when he took questions was from this long hair in the back, long-haired fellow. And he said, if the purpose of life is to know God, Krishna, then why is Maya so strong? As though that were some kind of defect in Krishna's arrangement. So without a blink or a wink or a skip and a beat, Prabhupada said, your purpose is not strong. And Prabhupada said that with such power, again it was like we all went, we were just blown away, completely blown away. Not just this fellow who asked the question, but we were all stunned by Prabhupada's quick and rapid reply to that question with such power and profundity. Your purpose is not strong. And it was like he wasn't just speaking to that guy, he was speaking to everybody. So during the question and answers, there was one fellow from Jamaica who was a life member, who was an industrialist in Jamaica. And Prabhupada had spent most of the lecture just blasting and hammering away at the materialistic civilization, the modern industrial civilization. This guy was an industrialist. So he raises his hand. Prabhupada, what about the wheels of industry? So without hesitation, Prabhupada said, stop those wheels. Whereas in other contexts, Prabhupada encouraged us to use the technology for Krishna's service, what have you. But in this case, Srila Prabhupada came down heavy on him, and he said, stop those wheels. So he must have known the man could hear that in the right spirit. Because Prabhupada, of course, was also using those wheels, turning him in a spiritual direction, yukta vairagya. And then I went in the temple room, just in time to hear some questions and answers that Srila Prabhupada was fielding after his talk, his arrival talk at the temple. And I got there just in time to hear this one devotee who had been with devotees. Actually, he was the younger brother of Mother Janava, and his name was Jay. And he had since being with the devotees, he had become associated with some born-again Christians. And he asked this question in a challenging mood. He said, so what is this love of God you're feeling? Just sort of out of left field, a real kind of a challenging tone. So, when Prabhupada would answer questions, he would answer more the intent of the questioner than the denotation, the meaning of the question. He would answer the spirit of the asker. So, Srila Prabhupada said, what is this love of God that I am feeling? It is that I am not afraid of anything. That's how he chose to answer that, because he was challenging, that's all. The first impression I remember about the installation was Srila Prabhupada sitting on the Vyasasana, and I believe there were also initiations going on at the time, before the actual inaugural arti. So, I was sitting to the left of Srila Prabhupada's Vyasasana, to the left of His Divine Grace, and I saw him while the initiation ceremony was going on. He was moving his lips. So I wanted to hear what he was saying, so I sort of snuck up behind the Vyasasana and I put my ear behind Srila Prabhupada, and he was chanting the Brahma Samhita, these deep, soft, resonant tones. Advaita Martuta Manadi Mananta Rupam, just on and on. It was just so wonderful. Then I went back to my place, and then during the initiation, all of a sudden, Srila Prabhupada, he wanted something. There was something that had to be done for the ceremony, and no one could understand what Srila Prabhupada wanted. Shyam Sundar couldn't understand him, Pradyumna couldn't understand him. And Srila Prabhupada was looking all over the room. I could see he was looking to see if anybody could understand what he wanted. And finally, his head wheeled over in my direction, and his eyes fell on me. And it's the only time I remember actually Srila Prabhupada looking directly at me, except for the initiation. And he looked at me, and I remember I was just sitting there, and I was just grinning. Just like this stupid grin on my face. It's kind of like, Srila Prabhupada's looking at me, like this, and he's looking at me. And he gave me this look like, you are an idiot. You could never in a million years understand what I want. But he didn't, the look said that, but at the same time, it was a look of such compassion. Like, I was an idiot, but, that was okay. I mean, it wasn't okay, but it was like, I still love you. So I was sitting there thinking, that's right, I could tell. He looked at me like, I'm an idiot. That's right, Srila Prabhupada. I was thinking this, I'm an idiot. You love me and I'm an idiot. And I was just blissed out, just because Srila Prabhupada was looking at me and I was an idiot. So anyway, finally somebody understood what he wanted, and the ceremony continued. And then Srila Prabhupada at some point, I don't remember when, but he got off the Vyasa-san. I don't remember this, but he left. But the ceremony was still going on. And then it was time for the inaugural arti of Radha Kalachandji. And when the curtains opened, there was Srila Prabhupada on the stage with Sri Sri Radha Kalachandji with this very Spartan background, nothing like today. You see the pictures of Kalachandji Dham. And there was Srila Prabhupada doing Achman, ready to do the inaugural arti. I said, what a treat. I've never seen Srila Prabhupada do arti. So I remember watching Srila Prabhupada perform this arti, and it's made a very deep impression of how he performed the arti. It was very deliberate and very meditative and very, just very deep with bhakti. It wasn't any, quick with circles. It was just very deliberate and meditative. And then when Srila Prabhupada offered the water to the deities, then he turned to us, and to my memory, we'd always been just passing the water around. The pujari would put it in the cup, and then somebody would come around and sprinkle. But Srila Prabhupada didn't do that. He just took the water from the water conch, and he put it in his hand, and he started flinging drops of water out at us, the congregation. And I remember leaping up in the air and catching these droplets of water and thinking of the first Gurvastak, the spiritual masters receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as the cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master extinguishes the blazing fire of material existence. And I remember this was just like the perfection of that shlok, that stanza. Feeling these drops coming from Srila Prabhupada's lotus hand and then just drinking them. So that was very wonderful. That at some time during one of those lectures, Srila Prabhupada told us frankly that we had all come to him, to Krishna, because of prasadam. He just told us flat out, we were all prasadam bhaktas. So Prabhupada, when Prabhupada said that, he was being fanned by Abhiram Prabhu, who was the temple president. And Abhiram is very reserved. He doesn't just open his mind to anybody. He's a very cool customer. And but when Prabhupada said we were all prasadam devotees, he looked at Abhiram and said, "You too, Abhiram?" So Abhiram was who became very sheepish, just out of character completely, and said, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada, me too." And when he said, "Me too," Srila Prabhupada said, "Jai." And when he said Jai, his head just wheeled slowly like the sun rising. And as his head wheeled, his smile kind of got bigger and bigger until it was like ear to ear. Jai. And his head all across us, and his head wheeled across us. It was like we went, Jai. It was so funny. Srila Prabhupada stayed, he stayed longer than a week there. He stayed a week to 10 days in June 76. And it was the time when he cleaned up the sahaja tendency that some devotees were getting into because the CC had come out recently, the so-called Gopi Bhava Club, and Prabhupada came down very heavy on it. I wasn't in on those meetings because I wasn't part of the club. I did go to one meeting. I was invited, and I knew something was wrong because the Bhagavad Gita was being minimized as just dealing with the modes of material nature. Prabhu, it's for neophytes. So anyway, Prabhupada did come down heavy on the devotees there, and it's what they needed, what we all needed to hear. The first full-blown Western, sahaja weed was growing around the Bhakti Lata. So Prabhupada came down very heavy. I wasn't there, so I can't say firsthand, but there were many famous quotes that came out of that, devotees even asking, "But Prabhupada, you say everything is in your books, that's there too, this intimate Leela." So I said, "Yes, my books are like a drugstore," I heard Prabhupada say. But it's not that when you walk in the drugstore, you just buy any medicine. You have to get the medicine that's appropriate for you. First Kurukshetra Leela, then Rasa Leela. First deserve, then desire. That was another answer Prabhupada gave to one of their questions, even challenges I heard. So Srila Prabhupada was so sweet, but so heavy, hard as a thunderbolt, soft as a rose. So because he's like that, and I'm even working on the books, I'm the indexer for the books, and I'm working on the 8th canto as he's there translating and dictating, and because he's so heavy, I'm thinking, I have these mixed feelings in my consciousness. I'm thinking, boy, Srila Prabhupada's been here a week. This is great. I wonder when he's going to leave. Because it was so heavy, just to be, I wasn't even living with him. I wasn't his servant, personal. I was just living in the same neighborhood where Prabhupada was staying. He was in his quarters in Dwarkadish Dham there. And I'm thinking, this is intense. I don't know how long I can go on, being in the same neighborhood as Prabhupada. He was so heavy, So that was another, indication that I had a long way to go before I could be intimate with Prabhupada. When Srila Prabhupada made it to Chicago for Rath Yatra, and the first impression I remember is when we greeted, Srila Prabhupada came in early in the morning, around 6:30, so we had Guru Puja for him. And I remember it was ecstatic chanting and dancing. But there was one devotee, I think it might have been Mahabodhi Prabhu. He was dancing kind of like, he was sort of like doing the twist, or some, so he was boogieing somehow. And Srila Prabhupada, I don't think he singled him out, I forget if he did or he didn't, but he stopped the kirtan. Srila Prabhupada stopped this ecstatic kirtan. And he pointed to a picture of Lord Chaitanya with his arms upraised. He said, "Dance like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu." So he would encourage anybody, however they were dancing. But, he wanted, in this case, the devotee to come to a higher platform, dance like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So the last time I saw Srila Prabhupada was in Los Angeles, and I was working at the BBT, making the indexes for his books. He was sending the 8th canto through production, 8th and 9th. Working on the 8th, that's right, because there was some purport in the 8th canto where Srila Prabhupada is talking about the days of the week and why they're in the order they're in. And it has to do with the planets, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So Srila Prabhupada said, I'm simply traveling all over the world. He'd just come from Hawaii, Fiji, whatever. And I'm asking this question, why are the days of the week in the order they're in? So he was asking us too. So why is Sunday the first day? So Srila Prabhupada, or some devotee piped up and said, because it is the Lord's day. And Srila Prabhupada said, don't bring in religion. Because he wanted to put everything on a scientific basis, and nobody accepts religion in this day and age. It's just all sectarian and sentimental. So that was very significant, that Srila Prabhupada wanted to set this scientific basis of the days of the week. And so we started talking about the order of the planets. The sun is closest, then the moon, controversial point, Mars, Mercury, etc., Jupiter, Venus, or whatever the order is, Saturn. So, and then I remember a couple of morning walks, nice morning walks in the park near Santa Monica, somewhere. And around 6 o'clock in the morning, the sun was just rising and was coming through the trees, and Hari Shari Prabhu was taping. And I remember this one thing, how there was this little old lady in the park, saw us coming one morning, this whole squadron of saffron moving toward her. And we all were coming toward her, and I was wondering, what's Srila Prabhupada going to say? I know he seemed like he was going to say something. What's Srila Prabhupada going to say? So what Srila Prabhupada said was, he didn't say Hare Krishna, or he just said, in the most gracious way, he said, "Good morning," with very long, gracious tones. And the lady kind of gave this nice return, the greeting, and she gave a look like, this is the most wonderful thing I've ever seen. So Srila Prabhupada knew just what to say at the right time.
Hare Krishna. So we heard wonderful pastimes from Prabhuji, much humorous and very close pastimes. reflecting the mood of Srila Prabhupada and how he used to deal in the things. So we'll start discuss something about Prabhuji in his glorification. Om Jnana Guna Gana Gana Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Puchayane Nirvishesh Shunnivad Ashatristhane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Krishna 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 and so we find that Prabhuji entered into the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada, as he was mentioning, in 1970 around. So he was initiated in 1971. So the first question comes like, okay, just for introduction. Then majorly, as Srila Prabhuji told, Suresvara Prabhuji told, his basic work was centered around Srila Prabhupada's books, book distribution, Sankirtan. At that time, the main service was, of course, book distribution and Sankirtan. And then later on, Prabhuji started to work with BBT and making the indexes, as he was telling in the lecture. And also, further, Prabhuji created gave that Srila Prabhupada as the founder Acharya. He emphasized on that and delivered many lectures on that also, just as Srila Bhakti Swami Guru Maharaj used to do these lectures on seminars. So how Prabhuji came to Krishna consciousness? So as a general seeker, Prabhuji introduced himself. Like he was also one of the hippies, or you can say like youth, who were not believing in the culture and principles of the society. So he was living in America, and that time he started to seek about what is this life, what is this truth, and he joined that party of hippies and all that. So in 1970, he left America and went to Toronto, Canada, and there actually he got the opportunity to visit ISKCON temple. And why he visited that temple? Because he came to know that there is free distribution of food. So that was his motivation. Prabhuji was mentioning, we were prasadam bhaktas. So then he entered the temple. As soon as he entered the temple, so he heard everything, like the atmosphere of the temple, the ringing of the bells, the smell of the incense, and everything felt so similar to him. Like everything was already known. It felt like he already knew all these things. And when he came and heard Srila Prabhupada chanting the kirtan, then actually Mahamantra, then actually he realized that, yes, this I have heard from before, like some remembrance came to his mind and he related to that very much. And then he heard a lecture from Jagadish Prabhuji. At that time, he was 21 years old and he was giving Sunday feast lecture. So when he heard, then he felt very nice. And finally, the Sunday feast prasadam was there, feast. So he was taking the feast prasadam, honoring prasadam. At the same time, because he was like looking for this wonderful opportunity to seek the truth about life. So he got very interested. And while eating prasad, actually, he was reading The Easy Journey to Other Planets, one of Srila Prabhupada's books. And Prabhuji told that he was being nourished both physically and spiritually also. Physically by eating such delicious prasadam, and spiritually by reading that book. And it discussed so wonderfully the philosophy that Prabhuji was very, very impressed. So after this program, then Prabhuji purchased the only Bhagavad Gita which was there. And that Bhagavad Gita was Macmillan one, which was like edited. Half of the purports are not there, like that. So this Macmillan Gita Prabhuji bought, and from earlier, like Prabhuji had interest. So when he read that, what actually impressed Prabhuji was how Srila Prabhupada, or how in the Bhagavad Gita Srila Prabhupada explained everything so nicely that all his contradictions in the mind, whatever philosophies and ideological things he had heard about life and why it was happening, why everything is like that. He had many thoughts in the mind. All that was cleared. So he finally, when he read Bhagavad Gita, and as usual, he committed himself to join this movement. So then 1971, Prabhuji got initiated, and he related how that incident took place of initiation. So one more thing, Prabhuji was also attending one of the classes in the Nectar of Devotion. And in the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhuji had studied, I just forgot that thing. Yes, Prabhuji had studied some point in the Nectar. Yes. Prabhuji had studied the point in the Nectar of Devotion, preface only, how Srila Prabhupada is describing that famous word of Srila Prabhupada. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when he was describing about Krishna, then that how Krishna is a cowherd boy. So then Prabhuji got this what we can say, inspiration or this thought, like, yes, this is the person actually whom I was looking for, or of whom I was being told in the churches as God. This Krishna is that person. So this was very emphatic point, because Srila Prabhupada always stressed Krishna is a person, God is a person, absolute truth is a person. So that also impressed Prabhuji very much. And later on also he continued reading the Nectar of Devotion. So he liked it very much. Then Suresvara Prabhu got involved in book distribution, and from 1976 to 1980, he worked as the indexer of creating the indexes of the books from Bhaktivedanta BBT. From 1979, as he told, like, he had been very close to Srila Prabhupada's teachings, and therefore he started studying the books very nicely. And then he began to write articles on them, explaining the things. So from 2009-16, he taught at the Mayapur Institute and focusing on foundational teachings. So he liked the teaching part. And then he prepared the seminar of Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya, 2011. And I just saw, like, 8 months ago also, Prabhuji had given his lecture seminar on the same topic, just 8 months before. So Prabhuji delivered all these lecture, and in 2014, Prabhuji got this responsibility of functioning as a spiritual master. And yes, this is an interesting thing. How Prabhuji holds a BA degree in teaching English as a second language. But you see the date. What is the date? 2006. Now this is also very interesting. He met Srila Prabhupada in 1971. So back so long. Now why this is there? That also I heard. Prabhuji was mentioning, actually, because when he was doing school and college, he dropped it 3 times. 3 बार college छोड़ दिया उन्होंने. क्यों? Because he got nothing related to what he was looking for, like doing searching about the absolute. So finally he thought, no, let us complete the degree. And in 2006 he took this degree. So Prabhuji currently resides in Tucson, Arizona, and he continues preaching and guiding his disciples. And this pastime already Prabhuji mentioned in his interview here. So thank you very much, Hare Krishna. So we pray to all these wonderful disciples of Srila Prabhupada, and we take inspiration from them, that we may also continue and get inspired to serve Srila Prabhupada's mission in a similar way. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Sureshwar Prabhu ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Sai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari.